Welcome, and having had the opportunity to spend some time talking about the Reformation, beginning with Luther and now some of the other major reformers and movements of the period, I'd like to reflect with Max and Nazanin on some of the themes that we've touched on and some of the developments that make the Reformation truly distinctive, but also a highly contested event, and to get their views on what they see happening here and how we should be thinking about it as we go forward into the Catholic Reform. Max?
I was really pleased by your discussion of Calvin and exile. And from my own research on Frankfurt, I'm convinced that exile is absolutely essential as the context in which these ideas come forth. So the absolute vulnerability of these individuals that are scattered across Europe and are trying to reform the church and reform their communities, but at the same time are vulnerable and sometimes on the run. So I'm really struck by this context of the Calvinist Reformed movement.
Yeah, and this notion of exile and persecution, we thought, is so formative for the Calvinist tradition, but we've also seen it amongst the more radical groups as well, with Menno Simons and others. This is a shared experience of the 16th century.
And I'm really taken with we kind of visualize this in the map that you showed us. This kind of extraordinary spread of Calvinism and these reform movements, but so much to Northern Europe, right? And so I think it's sort of exciting that we'll be talking about sort of Spain and Catholic Reformation to kind of get a kind of larger picture of religious kind of reform on the entirety of the European continent.
Yes, I mean, so often referred to as counter-Reformation, but in fact what we're going to see is that it's an extraordinarily rich and diverse culture of reform that takes place across Spain and other Catholic lands, and we will want to take that in. For me, I think one of the things that is most striking is that a movement that begins with Luther and the extraordinary discoveries, the personal transformation, the ideals of reform that emerged so early, in place in 1520 and when he stands before Charles V in 1521, that what happens within a very short period of time is the fragmentation of it, and this question of what is truth, and the question of how is the Bible to be interpreted. These fundamental issues which people passionately debate, things for which people die and for which they put other people to death. It's difficult for us to begin to grasp how important this was for people in a sense of life and death, and to understand how these ideals could become points by which people were divided, because it meant so much to them to get it right.
And also it was important for, as a charitable act, they wanted to make sure that other Christians were doing things correctly for their own souls. So this wasn't just persecution for the sake of killing people that disagree with you, but as a way of saving Christians that might be led astray. I think that's important to remember when we see some brutal images of these executions.
Yeah, it's very high stakes.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, thanks very much.